Fellow Ghanaians, good morning. So, as you may know, this morning Parliament is resuming. And usually when it does, there are always conversations that the House, as always, owe the country. And it's not mostly about the core duties it has, but about itself, its own conduct, and the pattern of behavior that is tolerating within its own walls. And a lot of them have gone unaddressed and unpunished for so long that it has begun to define the institution in the public mind in ways that no serious legislature should be comfortable with. Fellow Ghanaians, let's start with the matter of the Member of Parliament, who sat in the House, looked into the cameras, and spoke into a live microphone in the chamber of the legislature, describing her colleague, Dr. Zanetor Agyeman-Rawlings, as the daughter of a murderer. And that reference was to her father, former President Jerry John Rawlings. And whatever one's view about JJ's legacy will be, the use of that language about a sitting MP in the Chamber of Parliament is an affront to the dignity of the House and an affront to the basic standard of conduct that the standing orders of Parliament allows. And Parliament's response to this affront has been to claim, with a straight face, that in a chamber full of cameras and colleagues and staff, no one can identify which MP said that. Nobody. In a room where everyone knows everyone, where every seat is assigned, where proceedings are recorded, Parliament is asking you and I to believe that the author of that statement has successfully evaded identification for close to a year. That is an insult to the intelligence of all of us. And all of us who are following this matter must take it like that. And that is how we are treating this issue. Fellow Ghanaians, then over a year ago, there is also the appointment committee chaos, which remains perhaps the most documented, most witnessed, most thoroughly filmed act of collective misconduct in the history of the Parliament of Ghana in recent memory. And it's also become the most thoroughly unpunished. MPs disagreeing about the entirely mundane question of whether to continue vetting ministers late into the night or to resume the following morning, descended into physical confrontation in full view of the cameras that were broadcasting those proceedings to the country. The tables were overturned, chairs were destroyed, and microphones were damaged. Public property paid for by Ghanaian taxpayers were wrecked by the very people elected to manage the public's affairs with dignity and some competence. Ghanaians watched in real time. Everyone around the world has seen it. And then the House embarked on the very familiar ritual of pretending to take it seriously. It constituted an investigative process and spent scarce public resources and media attention on the appearance of accountability, and then delivered nothing. The investigative report has not been taken to the floor of the House. No meaningful action has followed since that so-called investigation. We know that in the early days, 4 members were suspended, but they were recalled almost immediately. A punishment that was so brief and so theatrical that it communicated the opposite of deterrence. It communicated that in Parliament, you can destroy public property in front of the cameras, and the consequence will be a suspension short enough to sleep through it. Fellow Ghanaians, if any ordinary Ghanaian, any market woman, a driver, a trader, a young person, in this community and in this country had destroyed public property the way those MPs destroyed it in the full glare of national television, they will not receive a 2-day suspension. They will be rotting in jail by now. They will be in a cell facing criminal charges with no television appearances and no recall motions to look forward to. The law in this country applies differently depending on where you sit. And Parliament has made that differential application so visible and undeniable through the handling of its own misconduct. Fellow Ghanaians, this is not the first time, and the pattern is consistent and damning. Unparliamentary language used and not sanctioned, physical altercations on the floor that conclude without any consequence. The process of investigation constituted and then abandoned. The standing orders invoked selectively and sometimes not at all. A culture that has taken root in Ghana's parliament, in which the rules exist on paper and the enforcement exists at the discretion of whoever is presiding. And that culture is producing a chamber And the public has increasingly stopped trusting those people to govern themselves, let alone to govern the rest of us. So as Parliament resumes this morning, the House must commit to resolving these outstanding matters, and it must turn the attention to those ones before anything else. Because an institution like Parliament that cannot account for its own misconduct has no moral authority to hold anyone else to account. You have to find the MP who calls Zanetor a daughter of a murderer and deal with the matter according to the standing orders of the House. You have to take the appointment committee's investigative report and act on the findings with all the seriousness that you can muster. Parliament must establish clear consequences that the Chamber of Ghana's Parliament is not a place where property can be destroyed without cost or where colleagues can be insulted without action. Fellow Ghanaians, Parliament is too important an institution to be thought of as a lawless, reckless chamber. But if it continues on the path that it has been on, rightly or wrongly, that is precisely what all of us will think of it. And the choice, ultimately, is that of Parliament to make. So this morning, I will be there. A lot of other journalists will be there. We'll all be covering proceedings in the House. We expect that the House will turn a new leaf, but also the conduct of the past must be punished. Good morning, fellow Ghanaians.